Legacy. What is a legacy? It's planting seeds in a garden you never get to see. Or at least that's what Alexander Hamilton himself quotes from the musical. Well, personally, I believe that I should be able to see my legacy, at least when I try to reach my goal as a professional writer, or at least a story writer specifically, or if you want to be technical, an author of some kind. Maybe on the same levels as, like, I don't know, Stephen King, or even, like, more controversially, J.R.R. Tolkien, or, oh no, not him, but maybe him too, but also, like, say, J.K. Rowling. But nonetheless, I wish to at least preserve a legacy of my own. Well, not for my glory, but as a Christian, I believe it is my duty to try and honor God through my writing as well, even if being a Christian isn't exactly something most people want to do these days due to certain issues of the political kind. But I'm not gonna delve into that because I really don't like talking about politics. And also, one thing that intrigues me when it comes to writing is the idea of creativity, like, or inspirations, as most of my, if not all my stories will be inspired by some kind of source, like either literary or even like films, as I've always been intrigued by the stories and plots. I mean, as I mentioned in one of my previous videos, I always liked animation, or animated movies especially. The reason being that I liked how the stories flowed with the illustrations. Though in my case, I realize now that it was the stories that I was drawn into and how they were written exactly, or at least at the time being. So I personally wanted to try my own hand at it. And while I don't think I'll ever be an animator, though I want to at least keep drawing, as I've always had art in my life. And funny thing is, when I took a course in McMaster specifically, this particular course was a kind of a visual arts media one. And one of the lectures, the teacher asked us, or rather taught us, the idea of what is creativity. Like, is it something purely original, or is it mostly kind of copied or inspired by something? Well, then again, it's like they say, copy or imitation is the best form of flattery, and hence why you'll see a lot of imitations or even pastiches and parodies and so many kind of forms of entertainment. Though personally, while I am partially inspired by many different things, that I will admit, though I don't want to copy it entirely and just pass it off with different names or labels. But in my case, I want to kind of say reimagine or reinvent the concepts that, or the story concepts that I've heard, or even real life stories that I want to kind of allude to, especially of the historical kind. Though I will add some elements of my life story, though I'm not sure if I'll ever make an autobiography. Though my mom keeps insisting that I should, at least, because I don't know, I guess she thinks I have a really great memory. Though to be honest, I think my memory's kind of getting fuzzy as well. I don't know if I have amnesia. Well, not amnesia, but I don't think I have dementia per se or something like that. But it seems kind of hard for me to remember things now, at least from when I was really young. But then again, that could be anyone at this point. As the more you get old, the less you start to remember of your childhood. Though you remember different or certain parts of your childhood, that depends on how exactly you were raised, whether it's a good thing or bad thing, it's anyone's guess. Though a part of me wishes I had photographic or even eidetic memory. But then again, I've heard a lot of people who went insane, or worse, died because of it. So yeah, maybe it's probably a good thing I wasn't born with something like that. But I just hope that maybe I could do something write or even make an autobiography of some kind. Though for now, I'll just try to stick to creating stories in different ways. Though I will talk bits about my past in some of my future videos. Well, that is if anyone's actually listening at this point. or even watching, like, if it's possible. As you probably saw from some of my Encanto X Coco stories, I have started creating some, you could say, fan fiction projects that will all be on Archive of Our Own, while also being referenced in some of my other videos. Though I will make some videos elaborating more on the lore in my Encanto X Coco stories and how they may or may not be connected to my future ones. Though, for now, I want to talk about a specific character that has been, well, existing for a while by now, but I think she's sort of getting a bit obscure, so I wanted to, I guess, bring her back into the spotlight. For this character was an original character who goes by the name Jenny Everywhere, though she's sometimes called the Shifter. However, the reason for this is because she herself is a unique original character that wasn't just made by anyone, although she was created in the early 2000s, or specifically 2002, by a Canadian comic book artist named Stephen Wintle, right? And she's described as being, well, in his words, as having short dark hair, along with wearing aviation goggles at the top of her head and a scarf around her neck. She dresses in otherwise like comfortable clothes and is of average size with a good body image. Right. Not only that, she's said to have lots of confidence and charisma, and apparently is always seen with a ready smile. And not only that, she appears to be either Asian or Native American. Right. And as a result, like, the one unique thing about her is that she's an open source, like, freely licensed character, meaning that she can be used in any kind of work, both original or even fan-made, though she seems to appear in more fan-made stories rather than original stories. But nonetheless, like, she's very unique for being the first and probably only free-to-use character, or at least she's the first to be specifically created as a free-to-use character, and she's even described as being, like, similar to Tintin if he listened to Le Tigre and joined the Fantastic Four. And she's said to be excitable, passionate, attentive, curious, and caring. And like Captain Marvel, she's just a really powerful kid. Right? She's also apparently inspired by a Russian comic superhero named Octobriana, though I don't really know about her. But other than that, she's a very unique original character who has an established personality and appearance. Though, as one can see from the various kind of, I guess, fan-made depictions of her, like, she's varies from appearance and even in personality. However, this was actually her main purpose, as she was specifically created to be used by anyone with a little bit of established lore for her. Right, and as the original creator, like Stephen Wintle, even stated that for licensing, that the character of Jenny Everywhere is available for use by anyone with only one condition. This paragraph must be included in any publication involving Jenny Everywhere that others might use as properly as they wish, all rights reversed. So, meaning that she's free to use and therefore free from copyright or legal issues, which is why she'll actually appear in or at least in all of my fan-made stories, though I'm not really going to feature my original stories, as I feel it's, I don't know, maybe using her for fanfic works is easier, or at least much better, or at least more fitting, especially since she actually does appear in some fan-made works, but mostly as like guest cameos, which will be the case in my story. As you could probably tell, the Everywhere last name, or at least the word everywhere that's used as her last name, is supposed to indicate that because she's an open source character, she can literally appear in any story, meaning that she's, I guess you could say, an in-universe, an in-universe dimension or world jumper or traveler who explores other realms, worlds, or even time periods. As while her backstory is vague, and the idea of whether she's human or not is, I guess, anyone's guess, but she definitely looks and acts human, and you could say she's kind of like a female version of Doctor Who, at least if if he was still male and wasn't just limited to traveling through time. Though I think like Doctor Who kind of broke free from the time travel restrictions, but nonetheless, like she's basically like the best at dimension hopping or traveling, and as a result, I feel that she's most fitting to appear in my stories as a recurring character, though she'll often be somewhat of a gag character who, well, my depiction of her will be more like the picture that's used on TV tropes, where she has somewhat tan skin, black hair, along with her iconic aviation goggles and scarf, though she'll probably be mostly wearing the that green kind of like not fur jacket, but the green jacket with the fur linings, along with the yellow boots and the blue pants. But I don't know, her appearance will vary in my story, but in my version, she'll mostly look like this, but with elements of her very first drawing that was illustrated by the original creator or creators, I guess. And anyway, she will be a major recurring character in my story, though most of the time she'll be featured in cameo appearances because, well, I mean, she's an open source character who can travel through dimensions. So I mean, how can you not use a character for something like that? Though in her case, she'll only appear in certain kind of chapters as a sort of a guest cameo. However, in my version, she'll be given slightly more personality, where she's actually aware of being in an original story, kind of I guess, Deadpool or even Gwenpool, from the Marvel series. And she is also aware that she's not from those particular universes that feature her, or at least that the stories feature in, as she will sort of, I guess, explain how she's from a different universe. So what universe it is kind of ambiguous, because I want to leave a sort of a deliberate ambiguity regarding her past and how she ended up gaining these abilities in the first place. And how I discovered her is pretty simple, TV tropes. Yes, with many other things, including story concepts or I guess cinematic devices, or literary devices, I discovered her on TV tropes, which is funny because I only discovered her by complete accident, just like how I accidentally discovered TV tropes. But nonetheless, I ended up discovering Jenny everywhere, but only on a particular page or article that was talking about the movie I watched with my sister recently called Everything Everywhere All at Once, which I mentioned in one of my previous videos, as some people in the page pointed out how that Evelyn, who gains the ability to travel through different dimensions, she's very similar to Jenny everywhere, especially since both Jenny and the title of the movie feature the word everywhere, which definitely seems very fitting. And a lot of people consider that movie to be, I guess, a spiritual adaptation, or the closest thing they have to a real-life Jenny Everywhere story, especially since she doesn't seem to be featured in many stories nowadays, which is why I want to feature her in my fan fiction stories, especially since, my Encanto X Coco stories are starting to get really popular. But anyway, going back to what I was talking about, I figured that Jenny would be the perfect character to be featured in my stories. However, she'll also be partially inspired by various other characters, such as you know that video game that just recently got released, though it's actually a remake of an older one called Live Alive? Well, there are two, or at least one or two gag characters that appear, known as the Watanabe family, right, with the father and the son. And there's always this kind of morbid running gag featuring usually the father getting killed, with the son crying out for his father and running away in a hysterical fashion. Well, some would feel sorry for them, including myself, but others will find it kind of hilarious in a black comedy. Though there are certain cases where it's not played for laughs and more played for drama or even horror in some cases, especially in the later chapters, which get darker by every like moment, especially the final chapter, right? And although obviously Jenny's not gonna die in my stories, I guess she's certainly not like Kenny from South Park, which is funny because they have so much on names. But anyways, like my version of Jenny Everywhere, she'll appear in all my stories, or at least my fan-made stories. But the thing is, because they take place in different timelines or even different universes, especially ones that probably wouldn't feature advanced technology or maybe focus on magic or mystical portions, she'll often appear like wearing different outfits, like, and even go by different pseudonyms as a way to blend in and to not make herself stand out too much. But nonetheless, like she'll often appear to provide like hidden or I guess subtle aid to or assistance to the other characters, as she believes in helping others no matter what, and while also partaking in like I guess fights or even helping defeat the bad guys as much as she can, because well she is like a heroine or a heroic character, and while she may come across as a joke or a gag character, she will like gradually gain a bigger role, right? Especially since I actually plan to feature as a major character, or at least a major supporting character, one of my upcoming fan-made stories. So which one is it? I'll maybe talk about it in a future story. But anyway, she not only has elements of the Watanabe family, who like make at least one cameo appearance in each chapter of Live Life, albeit under different names, like or different identities, but they're more like I guess loose descendants of each other. But like Jenny will also take elements from other characters besides Watanabe and even Deadpool or Gwenpool, as she's also inspired by another kind of fanfic kind of character like that I kind of discovered, like, again, through TV tropes. So in this case, it was a fanfic series that I read called The Many Dates of Danny Fenton, where it's basically a crossover romance series with plenty of action drama. And, like, one of the or at least the early stories, especially the first one, actually was created by a fanfic author named Flower Princess 11, who also appears as a self-insert version of herself within the stories, albeit for like small cameos. And in a way, Jenny Ever, or at least my version of Jenny Ever, will be very similar to that, which I thought was appropriate. And the fact that Flower Princess 11 is also aware that she's like a character in the story is also one of the main inspirations for my version of Jenny Everywhere, as she's self-aware while also breaking the fourth wall at times to address the readers, which will understandably confuse the other characters, or even, you could say, kind of hijack the, like, my, I guess, like, ending notes for my stories to thank the readers and encourage them to keep reading my stories, right? And well, overall, like, she's a very unique character that I wanted to utilize. So I obviously didn't create her, but even if she is a open, like, source or a free-to-use character, right? Other inspirations, such as, like, Uatu, the Watcher from Marvel, along with Where's Waldo, will be the main inspirations for my version of Jenny Everywhere. As, like Uatu, Jenny, well, she will provide aid from time to time, but she prefers to stand on the sidelines to help the other characters, as she feels that it's not her place to interfere too much, or otherwise it won't make any progress, or might accidentally impede the characters, or the good characters. And as for Where's Waldo, well, I just wanted to put in a sort of a little game for my readers, like, or at least for my loyal followers, to see if they can find her in any of the chapters of my stories, where she'll appear in all of my fanfic stories. And I wanted to kind of see if readers will keep a close eye out for Jenny Everywhere, especially since she will appear in a major kind of story or a major fanfic like role that she will definitely play a part in, right? Especially since like she ends up revealing an important secret that kind of ties all of my other fanfic stories together. Though what it is, I can't tell you. It's a spoiler, but let's just say that it involves both time travel and like the concept of other worlds and even other crossover characters as well. So I'll just leave that to your imagination. Oh, another thing about Jenny Everywhere is that she's kind of like Stan Lee, or at least the MCU version of Stan Lee, who always makes at least one cameo appearance in every, or at least in most of the Marvel movies that he like helped create. Though, like sadly, he passed away. But in the end, like he was able to make some sort of impact, and Jenny herself is kind of like that too, especially since she has the ability to appear in almost every story. Well, not almost, like in every story that she gets included in, and the reason for that will be explained in another story that I plan to feature in as a major character. Though that will be both a secret and a spoiler, like for the time being. Speaking of multiverse slash like dimension hopping slash time traveling like characters, like the ones that I didn't create but others, like there are, or at least there's one specific example that's kind of similar to Jenny Everywhere, though she's more malicious, or at least morally ambiguous compared to Jenny Everywhere. Well, she herself has like say an evil slash morally ambiguous counterpart, like namely Jenny Nowhere, but that's a different version where like this particular character, she's actually a VTuber, as you probably know her by now, where she recently, or at least she came out a couple years back, and she calls herself like Amelie. Yeah, however, the VTuber persona she created is known as the Monarch, or the multiverse Monarch. Yeah, no relation to that Monarch from Venture Bros, as she's a far different version, though she does have a butterfly motif similar to him, except she uses it more, I guess, like gracefully, or a lot more, I guess, maliciously compared to him. Though, ironically, she wears an all-white outfit with elements of blue, like especially on her butterfly wings. Though it's more of like a cape rather than an actual pair of wings. But nonetheless, like she's shown to be both beautiful but also quite dangerous and intimidating. And even her introduction video, like kind of like say lampshades how beautiful yet uncanny she is, as she's clearly not human, or at least not human anymore, as well, we don't really know what she is, but apparently according to her introduction video, or at least her other introduction video, as well as her song lyrics, she used to be like a heroine in her own right, who was a just warrior, albeit a naive one, but nonetheless, she understood good and evil and had a clear black and white morality. Unfortunately, it was that kind of morality that led to her downfall, as apparently in her old world, the hero or heroes that were supposed to help defend her world ended up betraying her along with the people they were supposed to protect, and as a result, they apparently destroyed the world that the Monarch used to live in, and as a result, like they apparently left her to die, or at least rot all alone in that particular world, and that experience, and the fact that, well, judging from her song lyrics, she was apparently in a relationship, or at least in love with the hero, until they betrayed her, and thus shattering her heart as well as her faith in, well, in her words, her faith in heroes and goodness. Like, though who this hero was and why they betrayed her is anyone's guess, but all we know is that, like, they may or may not be out there, or at least they probably managed to escape, like, unscathed, like, which is probably why, like, she seeks to revenge against them, or at least, like, that's what she claims. That's if she didn't kill them already, or if they didn't get destroyed by their own cruelty and ambitious nature. But anyway, in this case, the Monarch, she ends up somehow gaining the ability to access other worlds, or at least other dimensions and universes, and as a result, she seeks to become the very villain or the very threat that all the other heroes are supposed to face. Though, why? though whether she's doing this as a way to help improve them so they won't make the same mistake as her so-called hero did, or she's doing this as a way to destroy all heroes, as a way of, I guess, taking her anger out on those who call themselves good, as anyone's guess. So personally, I think it's maybe a bit of both, but who knows, especially since she also plans on not only befriending the heroes by using copies or I guess clones of herself but inserting them in other worlds, kind of like you could say a malicious form of self-inserts to invade other worlds and infiltrate the heroes while gaining their trust before betraying them. As she plans on taking over every single universe within the multiverse, hence why she's called the Multiverse Monarch. And as a result, she plans on continuing this for possibly eternity. Though the one thing I'm curious is as to how she gained these abilities in the first place, and did she always have this ability, or did it just occur after she lost her old world? As she claims that she can't remember anymore, which I guess is probably due to the trauma or possibly from amnesia. But how she's able to remember that her world got destroyed is anyone's guess. But overall, she's a very unique character, as I think she's more of an anti-villain on the gray area, as she is, she's more, I guess, self-proclaimed evil, or at least she chose to become evil. And her songs kind of reflect how she's basically a fallen hero. However, she does seem to have possibly good intentions, given how, she does plan on invading other worlds, but she also claims that they'll be safer under her watch, and that she's merely trying to, I guess, prevent the heroes from destroying themselves along with their worlds, or at least their friends and families. But nonetheless, the multiverse monarch is still pretty ruthless, as she even states that she will not hesitate to hunt down or slaughter anyone who gets in her way, or even for, I guess, pissing her off. So of course you have to be very cautious as to how you approach someone like her. Though whether she'll, turn good or something is anyone's guess, though it doesn't seem likely. But apparently Amelie states that she has more to come, or at least more, I guess you could say, lore or stories to tell through either her songs or even her promotional videos. But for now, it's, her first album, The Rise of the Monarch, is the only kind of, I guess, source of information we can get out of her. Anyway, she's, her character, along with her backstory and even her multi-dimensional powers, they're very similar to two other characters, namely Medea Pedeth Machina from Rising of the Shield Hero, or rather the original web novel version, which was basically a prototype, right? Along with, again, from Live Alive, Odio, the Lord of Dark, where she seems to be a combination of both of them, though it could be just a weird coincidence, as in the case of Medea Pedeth Machina, Medea is a malicious goddess who has the ability to access different worlds by creating incarnations or fragments of herself, with one of them being the infamous Princess Malti, or the bitch or witch that she's called in the later stories, where it turns out, at least in the original web novel, that Malti, or at least Medea, is the true cause of the great wave calamities that are affecting not only the kingdom or the world that Naofumi is sent to, but they're also starting to affect various other worlds as well within the multiverse. And as a result, Naofumi and his allies have to defeat Medea in order to stop her. However, she's proven to be powerful, or at least far too powerful even for Naofumi to handle, and as a result they need the assistance of an actual god slayer to defeat her, as I guess in this case only a god can kill another god. And the fact that she does this not only to gain more power, as her goal is to unite at least 8 worlds and merge them together so she could feed off of their energy and empower herself. But she also does this because she can, as she thinks it's fun to basically torment people or even corrupt people and turning against each other, which shows just how sick and twisted she is. And she's basically, you could say, an evil version of a Mary Sue or a villain Sue, or she's basically an evil version of an OP character who's gone way too far in their desire for power. And while sure, Jenny everywhere herself might be seen as Mary Sue, but I feel like she's more nuanced and fleshed out compared to the usual Mary Sue, where they basically have no personality other than being adored and loved by others. But in this case, Medea is clearly meant to be a vicious kind of villainous parody of the concept, right? And given how she does end up being defeated by the characters who have basically had enough of her evilness, so of course they end up destroying her, because that's literally the only way they can stop the clan. Well, that because they all want to avenge their loved ones or even themselves for all the trouble she put them through, either with the help of her incarnation or just with her actions alone, right? And though she doesn't appear in the light novel series or even in the manga and anime, as they have a completely different enemy or threat, who is the true cause of the Great Wave calamities, and as a result, Princess Malti herself has no connection to Medea, and she's apparently just always been an evil, if not incredibly spoiled brat, right? And she doesn't even have Medea, whose corruptive influence on her, as an excuse for her actions. She's just always been horrible, but nonetheless, it's very interesting how she, or at least Medea, is a very important character in the original, or at least the original web novel story, before she got edited out, because apparently that version was not canon, at least according to the author. Enough about her. The other character I want to talk about is Odio, the Lord of Dark from Live Live, where or not Emily, but rather like the Monarch, he too was once, you could say, a hero or a knight in shining armor. Unfortunately, his story ends in probably the biggest tragedy or one of the biggest tragedy in video game history, which could probably rival even Greek or Shakespearean tragedy, which is funny because it takes place in a medieval inspired kingdom called Lucresh, or at least his chapter, The Lord of Dark, takes place in a medieval kingdom that's very similar to England, though it's apparently a separate kingdom of its own. But anyway, his story involves him trying to, I guess, save the princess, and along with the king of Lucresh from the previous Lord of Dark. But unfortunately, things don't go the way he wishes, as it turns out his own friend Strabo had at one point betrayed him by allying with the Lord of Dark, though whether he did it willingly or he was brainwashed in doing so is anyone's guess, though it's hinted to be a bit of both. But anyway, Strabo's betrayal, along with both his and the Lord of Dark's machinations, not only cause Orsted, who was Odio's original name, to become humiliated and shamed, as he unfortunately gets tricked by them into killing the king, who was the father of the princess that he was supposed to save, which is, double ouch, right? And it gets even worse when after Orsted ends up being forced to kill Strabo for his betrayal, the princess herself, unfortunately, does not take Strabo's death well, as thanks to Strabo's manipulations, along with the possibility that he was the one who engineered or arranged for her kidnapping and staged it to look like he would be the one to save her instead of Orsted, the princess ends up rejecting Orsted by accusing him of abandoning her, right before, sadly, committing suicide as a way to spite him, right? As thanks to Strabo's manipulation, she came to believe that Strabo was her one true love instead of Orsted. And this, along with the fact that he lost all of his friends and even the respect of the people, finally caused Orsted to not only renounce his humanity, but also give up on the idea of being good, or at least or even being human. And as a result, he ends up taking the throne as the new demon lord by finally giving in to his hatred along with every single negative emotion he can think of. And this ends up impacting the plot where his hatred ends up extending to various different time periods and possibly different universes as his incarnations take on the form of various either not monsters, but humans as well as even animals or malicious artificial intelligence or robots who seek to destroy humanity or at least make humanity suffer for what happened to him. Right? It's up to the seven heroes to put a stop to his reign of terror once and for all, especially in the final chapter. Though in the final chapter he does redeem himself, or at least he does realize the error of his ways and becomes Orsted again, even if it means basically killing himself by attacking Odio, who has now become the source of his hatred. Though in the original game he wasn't exactly redeemed. He did get brought back to his senses, but by then it was too late, and he only just told the heroes that they need to be careful for another Lord of Dark could rise again from hatred. Though in the remake he gives the same speech, but only after he sacrificed himself to put a stop to the madness once and for all. And the heroes, they end up giving him encouraging speeches, with some being more tough love if anything else. But nonetheless, Orsted is touched by how they were able to hold on to their humanity as well as their sanity. So of course he encourages them to not make the same mistakes that he did before finally fading away and returning them back to their original worlds, which I believe was probably a good send-off for all of them at the end, right? Though while the Multiverse Monarch has yet to redeem herself, or at least show any proper benevolent intentions, which are only hinted at, I guess, but nonetheless, she seems like a combination of both Orsted / Odio and Medea, though she's probably a saint compared to Medea, who wishes to destroy as many worlds as possible, whereas the Monarch, she apparently seeks to, I guess, preserve the world, just so she could take over. But nonetheless, she seems to at least show a hint of care for the others and merely wishes to prevent the heroes from making the same mistakes that she did, or at least the hero that betrayed her did. So who knows, maybe she's more like Orsted or even Odio than Medea, as given how they both have tragic backstories, whereas Medea, she doesn't even have any backstory per se, though she apparently came from an advanced society that was ruled by godlike beings, but I think it got destroyed at one point. Though whether, I don't know if she destroyed it or not, but nonetheless, she at one point became drunk or even mad with power to the point where she was willing to destroy other worlds for her own amusement, and she wished to drain them of their energy to preserve her own power until she was eventually defeated by Naofumi and the others. The Monarch herself is a very unique take on the idea of a villainous multiverse or dimension traveler, which I'm very curious to see more of in the future.